Coffee is a big part of my day. Not only does it help me get through the morning, but I just really love the taste of good quality beans. Trade is a subscription service that brings great coffee from indie roasters all over the country right to your door. Tell Trade what you typically like, whether it's espresso or single origins or even decaf, even how you like to make your coffee, and they will recommend the right beans for you. Or you can just choose from over 450 different coffees. Then you select how often you'd like the coffee delivered to you. Shipping is always free, by the way. And if you need to skip a week or so, just do that. You can do it. No charge at all. Then pick back up when you're ready to get beans delivered to your door again. Go to unitedwedrink.com/trade to get started with Trade today and start getting some of the best coffees in the country delivered to your door. That's unitedwedrink.com/trade. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I have totally done this intro about 20 times already. Technical errors, my ability to speak has come into play, but I am doing this by myself, because we have a guest on the show. Yes, we have our first guest of the year 2024, and why not have a good friend come on? Yes, we have our friend Tim Johnson on. He has been on this show before, but he has been under a different title before. Previously, when Tim was on the show, he was a brewer for a brewery. Now, Tim works for a distillery, and we wanted to have him come on and talk about similarities and differences in being in a somewhat adjacent alcoholic beverage field. He's still making booze, but in a different manner. So we wanted to see what it was like for him to transition over to something slightly different, but slightly similar. So I'm not going to bother you with bunch of blah, blah, blah here, especially because this is like my 25th take at recording this shit. So let's get into talking to our friend Tim Johnson, who now is at Dashfire. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's been a couple years, I think, since your episode, which was actually the second time you were on the show because the first episode got deleted.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true, yeah.
Joel's computer ran out of disk space while we were recording, so his whole recording got deleted.
Yeah.
Typical Joel.
Well, his kid had taken up too much with like Minecraft or something like that.
With every game, Minecraft, Roblox, what's the one that all the kids like really go after? Fortnite. There we go. That's a thing, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say Donkey Kong. I would have been wrong, huh?
It's funny. A, my kid has just gotten into Roblox, but B, someone rolled a blue barrel at me today, and I jumped over it, and I said I thought we were playing Donkey Kong. So that's a very apropos reference.
Well, we obviously are people of a certain age, at least into different deviations one way or the other.
Yeah.
But my son he's turning 6 in a few days, and the video game that he watches on YouTube constantly, I watch them with him. I don't know their names. I don't know what the goal is other than people narrating the entire thing. And I think Roblox sounds like a thing that he watches. but I don't know. I don't know. I'll never know. I probably should never know. Kids are supposed to have things that the parents don't understand. That's the entire point of being a kid.
Yeah, I believe the Fresh Prince wrote a song about that, actually.
He did. Sage wisdom. He was a noted philosopher. It's Nietzsche, Socrates, Fresh Prince.
Fresh Prince.
Not Will Smith, Fresh Prince.
Different people altogether.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen them both in the same place at the same time?
Good point, Mike.
Well, that is a very good point.
Tim, what are you drinking here tonight? You drinking anything?
Yeah, I'm actually drinking the Dash Fire Chai Spiced White Russian RTD.
Ooh.
I've been getting down on this lately. It doesn't feel like winter here. It was like 55 degrees or something like that today here in Minnesota. So it doesn't feel like winter, but it's still kind of a nice winter cocktail, and I've been quite enjoying it lately.
And tri-spice, that I assume that means it's the Latin for a number, right?
No. Chai, not try.
Oh, chai.
Yeah.
Chai.
Like the Simpsons, where Lisa says that what she does to relax is Tai Chi and chai tea.
Okay, then I take all that back. I would probably hate that because I hate chai. Ugh.
Oh well.
Yeah.
I mean, you also hate a lot of things that everyone else likes, so that's fine.
I just hate a lot of things.
You do have a lot of very particular tastes, Mike. I was doing a mushroom pasta dish the other day with like these 7 different gourmet mushrooms in this Asian sauce, and it was one of the best meals I've ever made. And the entire time I was cooking, I was like, Mike would just hate this. Mike has a mortal enemy, and it is the humble mushroom. And I've tried to convince him otherwise, but chai, mushrooms for a long time, coffee.
Yeah, I wasn't big
You've
on
changed
coffee.
on
Now
that.
I need it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've changed my mind a little bit on mayo as long as other stuff is mixed in with it, like make an aioli with paprika or whatever, and I can deal with mayo that way.
I realized I was an asshole when I said that I hated mayo. When I realized if you just called it an aioli, I loved it. Like you could just take Miracle Whip out of a jar, put it next to some Brussels sprouts, and go, "Do you like my lemon aioli?" I'd be like, "This is the most delicious thing in the history of mankind," because I'm a hypocrite.
And that's what we're going to do for the entirety of this show is talk about things we hate that we actually do like, and just point and laugh at each other like, "Ha, you're an asshole."
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that. I'm in.
I think that's the way the show should go from here on out. Everyone's sick. We're sick and tired of beer. Beer's dying, right? The industry's dead. That's why Tim's not working in it anymore.
Exactly.
I think it died when Tim left. I think that was the tipping point.
Yes.
Right. That was the death knell for beer. Okay.
I remember the day he left, Anchor was like, "Fuck it, we're done."
It literally was right around that point. That's what's even funnier.
Mike does his research.
It's what I'm known for. That's why they call me Mike Research Urevich.
It's a long nickname, Mike.
It really is.
What are you drinking?
I'm having some Hardywood Park's Fluffy GBS. Their gingerbread stout with marshmallow. I got a pack of their gingerbread stout variants at Whole Foods during the holidays, and this is left over from it. And I always like the gingerbread stout, and so that it was really nice. They had a Christmas version, which was coffee, a porter version, which was in essence it's just the same beer without lactose, and then this is the beer with marshmallow. So it's nice. I think it's pretty well balanced. It's not overly sweet, but tasty beer. Have a little bit of Amaro too. with.
Can we just make a decree here that instead of saying with marshmallow, any beer that says with marshmallow, they can just say with sugar? Because
Yeah.
marshmallow is just sugar. There's no real flavor to marshmallow. It's just sugar.
Just sugar. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So you
well,
have a gingerbread stout with sugar. That's good. People like sugar.
That's a very good point, Kevin, which makes it like that you even have to declare marshmallow. Now, this does say marshmallow flavor, so I'm sure there's some extract in here, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, you don't have to declare sugars on your labels, so good point.
Oh,
There's I'm being a little bit unfair. There's a little bit of flavor. I mean,
You were being facetious?
never. I mean, listen, we when I was doing beers for years with Tahitian vanilla beans, I would say that they tasted like marshmallow, and we use that in sweet potato casserole. So I get it. There's more than that to it, but I do think that people get a little up their own asses about marshmallows.
Well, I think people get up their own asses about the difference between stout and porter. I remember one time I was on a panel and someone asked the difference between stout and porter, and one person went into this long-winded answer about like roasted versus not roasted or this or that, and I said honestly, you know what the difference between a stout and a porter is? Whatever the brewer put on the label.
That's fair.
Like it would have been the difference is what that guy says and what that guy says.
Yeah, like literally at this point, I mean, we all have our opinions, but we've had plenty of beers that were porters that tasted like stouts or stouts that tasted like porters, and they didn't, because at this point, like I have a friend who is convinced that he loves porters but hates stouts. And I've been like, yeah, because you had one porter you loved and one stout that you hated, but I guarantee you, if I gave you this beer and changed the name, you would be all about it.
I don't know how that didn't become like a lifelong goal to fuck with him and like prove him wrong.
Well, I mean, there were a billion times in brewing where I changed the style. Like I had a beer that was a hoppy wheat before hazy IPAs became a thing, and hoppy wheat didn't sell for shit. And I made the exact same beer and I called it a hazy IPA, and suddenly it sold amazingly.
There's a local brewery here who has a hoppy wheat. They've always called it an American wheat ale. It's a hazy IPA, but for some reason they still insist on calling it an American wheat ale. And it's just like, I think it's all mosaic, dry hopped, hazy wheat beer.
Yeah.
I'd love to run the experiment with somebody else's money, by the way, and just make the same beer, 12 taps at a tap room, one beer, every one of them's named something different.
Yep.
And just put it out there and watch. And then what you do is you have one of those one-way mirrors. And then everyone just sits on the other side and just looks at the people as a social experiment to watch them go, this blonde porter, this hoppy blonde porter tastes a lot like an IPA, but I can see the subtle differences.
Oh yeah, no, I've always wanted to do that. Like when I would bartend.
It's like undercover brewer.
Yeah. When I would bartend, I always wanted to give someone a flight of 4 of the exact same thing, and just listen to them talk about the differences between them. I'm like, oh, I like this one. I'm not a big fan of this one.
This one is great. This one is shit. I am 100% convinced of this. I hate all the things I love, and I love all the things I hate.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, it would be really fun to do that with an imperial stout and say that it has all these different pastries things in it, and see people go, you know what, I can get the coconut in there, and there's no coconut. It's just a base beer.
Yeah.
There's never been a coconut anywhere near it.
When I was at Badger Hill, we made an imperial stout, but it didn't really come across as imperial stout. And I said, well, let's just call this imperial porter, which is not even a style, right? Like literally, a stout is supposed to be a stout porter. Like literally, a stout by definition is supposed to be an imperial porter. Although these days, most porters have higher ABV than most stouts. Like they've swapped in some ways. But so we just kind of invented this idea of imperial porter, and it for whatever reason that made a ton more sense, and I still can't tell you why. Um, but people people get into certain things in their head and convince themselves of whatever they want to convince themselves of.
Yeah.
Works in beer, works in politics, and works pretty much everywhere.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's why I've always thought it so funny to see like when GABF awards come out, because you have a bunch of categories in there that are styles that most people don't even think about. And
Yeah.
when something wins an award for it that has a different stylized name in it, like you'll see something win like an ESB and it's called like blah blah Amber Ale, and like they are naming this based off of what sells, but they're using a different style guideline to make the beer and are
Oh yeah.
admitting so.
Well, I mean, if you look at one of the most popular beers up in the upper Midwest, uh, from New Glarus, um, they call it a farmhouse ale, but it's really just a cream ale. There's nothing farmhouse about it.
Oh, you're talking about Spotted Cow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I, I mean, it happens all over the place. Like one thing we found in the Upper Midwest is you can't call anything a bitter. You can't call it an ESB or a special bitter or anything. But if you call it an
Pub ale.
English pub ale, yeah. And so, I was talking to Andy at Bad Weather. Um, I've sent you some of Bad Weather stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, he had an ESB that was just an absolute. It was just bomb. But it didn't sell. But then he changed it on the menu to pub ale, and suddenly it sold. So I guess
It's
I
insane.
I guess what I'm getting down to is that all beer is marketing.
And that is the episode. Hope you learned
Thank
something.
you. Yeah, appreciate you coming by.
Uh, we started this off on a really great tangent. We didn't even get into why I asked you on the show.
No, yeah, that's
So
true. That's true. Well, if
you you spent a lot of time in the beer industry.
hmm
Um, brewed at what, three different places?
Yep,
Was it?
yep.
And recently have kind of taken a sidestep in the adult beverage industry, and you're now working for a distillery that
Yes.
does a lot of co-packing and does a lot of their own brands.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so I work for Dash Fire Distilling in Northeast Minneapolis. It's actually like a half a mile down the road from when I worked at 612 previously. We originally were known for our bitters. I It's actually a brand that like I've followed along for quite a while. I It's funny. Uh I was looking through some old photos and I found I made a backpacking stove with one of our like the RTDs, like the little 100 milliliter cans from years ago when they first kind of launched those things. So I've been a Dashfire fan since long before I started working there. It just kind of worked out that way. But originally known as largely about bitters, and then got into RTDs, and then co-packing for a lot of different brands. So also NA cocktails in bottles and cans, and THC cocktails in bottles and cans. Just like the beer industry up here, the distilleries have been able to get into THC since that became legalized last year, and yeah, a little bit of everything. We do also have the opportunity in certain ways to do wine and beer. We have not gotten into that yet. But yeah, we're kind of running the gamut on all of the cocktails.
You know, I I did not put two and two together until you just mentioned it. I do recall having seen Dash Fire Bitters before.
Yeah.
Like you've told me who you worked for, number of times talked about it there, but you've never really mentioned Bitters. And now that you said it, I'm like, oh fuck, I have seen those before, like years ago.
Yeah,
And
that's probably our most widely distributed product. I mean, like we even sell it in Italy. Um, uh, the bitters go all over the place. That's the one that's the most prevalent.
mhm. So with this changeover, like I mean, through our own conversations, I've heard a lot, but like for the people out there, what are some things that you were immediately like, oh fuck, this is just like the brewing industry that you that made it seem a little easier to get your footing into it.
You know, one of the things for me is, well, I mean, again, uh, like like the other day, I was fermenting a rum base, so it's still making wort and fermenting it, right? Before
Hmm.
it gets distilled. So a lot of that is still carryover. The packaging side is certainly carryover. I think one of the value adds that I bring to the team is that I do have a lot of experience with a lot of different packaging lines and inline carbonators and things like that. So a lot of that is certainly the same. Um, the general processes are the same. I think uh, there are some differences that maybe stick out. It's funny. I was having a conversation with our operations manager the other day because I was talking about all of the things that I would have gotten written up for from the Department of Ag or alcohol and gambling enforcement at a brewery that we seem to be able to get away with at the distillery. He was like, "Oh no, we're way more regulated than breweries are." I'm like, I don't know, man. There are like a billion things. Like I literally one time we were doing the news was doing a live broadcast from our brewery, and alcohol and gambling enforcement during the live broadcast was emailing about violations that they were seeing. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, I think alcohol and gambling enforcement in this state just cares way more about the breweries, and they still just haven't caught up to the distilleries because distilleries are still relatively new. There's a lot less of them. They're not as prevalent, and they're a lot, uh, younger than a lot of the breweries, and so AGE seems to like care way more about those things. But yeah, no, there are a ton of things that I'm like, nope, that would be a violation. I got written up for that before. I got told I need to change that before. I got told I need to change that before. Like, how are we getting away with all of these things? So, um, I don't know. We probably should be controlled a little bit more, but I think also the general nature of high proof spirits. Uh, I think there's maybe just a leniency given there that maybe shouldn't be there, but is there.
In what sense? Like, would it? Yeah, I'm. What makes you think that they would just be like, ah, you're making higher proof stuff?
I mean, I think things in regarding to sanitation in particular. Um, a lot of the things where people would worry about, adventitious microbes in brewing when you're doing high proof stuff. That's just less of an issue, right? Like those adventitious microbes don't exist in an 80 proof spirit. Um, it's certainly something I've been trying to like change our mindset on because I think a lot of people have always been like, well, that's just a spirit. Let's not worry about it. But the reality is, we're getting into, like I said, THC, NA stuff, lower proof RTDs. That we should be a little bit more worried about some of those things than we have been in the past. But I think, especially because we're not a traditional distillery like a lot of the other ones are. A lot of the other distilleries are just doing high proof spirits. I don't know that people are looking out for some of those things along with cleanliness, sanitation, the use of non stainless vessels and different pieces around the brewery or the distillery that like I would have not been able to get away with at a brewery. So I don't know. It's kind of a double-edged sword in that way.
It's it's fascinating the the dichotomy between those two things in your experience. But I'm also thinking of this from my perspective. And in Florida, no one's ever up our ass at all in breweries. I mean, no one has ever. I've never gotten a violation. I've never gotten a visit. It seems like the wild, wild west down here in breweries, let alone what might be going on with distilleries in the state of Florida, which once again, like you're mentioning, still vastly more breweries and distilleries, and probably still the same problem with one catching up to the other.
Yeah. No, I think so. We've had a couple, like my friend's brewery actually got into, and this I don't even think he was in violation. I think he just got a Department of Ag inspector with a grudge. I mean it's certainly not perfect up here. I had a friend who owned a brewery up here, and we had a debate about what we could or couldn't do, and so we literally drafted the exact same email and emailed alcohol and gambling enforcement with the exact same, like verbatim. Here's the question we have, and we got two different answers based on whoever answered the email. So I mean, which isn't necessarily surprising. But that's part of bureaucracy when it comes to regulations, and so you can get shut down for any reason. But yeah, no, like there was a brewery up here that um I still don't understand what technically the violations were. I think he just pissed off the Department of Ag inspector, and so they were shut down for like a month, which I maybe to some of the listeners doesn't sound like a big deal, but Kevin, you can say that like being shut down for a month is like a fucking nightmare.
That's a death sentence. I mean,
Yeah.
what ends up happening to your product, especially depending on what kind of production you're doing. If you're a tap room only and you've got a bunch of beer in the cooler, you can weather that storm. But if you're in stores and you've got packaged on the shelf, I mean, so just recently, our head brewer Ralph Renault was out sick with COVID for I think a whole week, at least 5 business days over a week or two span, and he's the only one that can brew beer, and that's 1 week. And now we're going to have deficits in the market. If he was out for a month, I think I might just not go back. I think I would just quit. I would say I don't care if I'm an owner. I'm not going back and dealing with this shitstorm of having to refill a pipeline with a month worth of beer.
Well, I mean, I'd also say for the tap rooms, it's worse because you now don't have a month worth of revenue at all in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, because you can't sell at the same time. It's not even about production.
Exactly. If you're shut down by the Department of Ag, it's not just about production being shut down. You can't operate your tap room. Like that becomes a killer.
And you can't sell to a distributor either. I would take it.
Yeah, basically, you just have
even
to,
if you had product in there, you couldn't be like, "Hey, distro, can you take this?"
Yeah, you basically have to just sit with thumbs up your ass. So I mean, we've seen a lot of. It's funny because we've started to see a fair amount of closures up here. I don't know what's going on down there. That people are attributing to saturation in the market and not really understanding what really happened during COVID, that has now the chickens have come home to roost. So yeah. Again, we're on a tangent. We're back at a beer tangent. It's one thing that for us, I guess, in the spirit world is we do have a tasting room. But by and large, again, like our bitters, we sell our bitters at the tasting room, but that's not the primary thing. Our cocktail room is a cocktail room. You go in to get it's a fantastic place. It's got this great mid-century modern vibe to it. We've got vinyl nights. All the handcrafted cocktails are by some expert bartenders that have run cocktail programs around the cities. Um, but if our bread and butter is bitters, for instance, you're not necessarily moving that through there. I mean, we do sell it out of there, but you're really doing that through both liquor stores and then non-liquor stores, right? Our bitters can be sold in I went to a I don't even know what I would call it. It's a high-end food and pantry type of like I don't know what the national chain equivalent would be, but like it's a high-end kitchen and whatever supply store, and we sell bitters in there. So uh we're able to sell those in places that aren't liquor stores, and so that in the spirits world, I think probably helped a little bit.
What is your product mix? I mean, how many different things are you canning and selling or packaging and selling in the market?
Um, what's funny is I was asking the packaging manager literally just the other day, what is our total SKU count? And and it changes all the time. We also do a ton of co-packing. Um, and so that helps keep us busy and diverse, and it always kind of changes. We right now we have one whiskey fermenting, one distilling. We're doing bottling on probably we have one whiskey co-packer that we've been bottling every single day this week. We've got one RTD um co-packer that we're doing 2 days this week. We have not run our own RTD cans in a little while, but there are some that are coming up. We're bringing on some new business. We've got some co-packers that are maybe falling to the wayside. It really kind of varies month by month. Um, uh, yeah, boy, that's not an easy question to answer, frankly.
I'm here to ask the tough questions. You're on the hot seat. You didn't know you'd have to do math, but hey, here I am.
Yeah. Well, no, but the thing is it really does vary. So we just brought on a brand new co-packer that has been taking up the majority of our time for now, and I don't know how much that's going to be, but there are weeks where one co-packer might take up all of the week, and then there's another one where we can do all of our product, or we split because we have multiple lines, and so we might be able to split between the lines depending on what our personnel is. Um, so yeah, it really, really does vary. We work with multiple distributors. Co-packers have multiple distributors. It it's not nearly as consistent as I would expect it to be.
Now, with your co-packing, are majority of the brands that you work with, do they send you the product or do you make the product from beginning to end for a lot of them?
A lot of those things we'll get a neutral grain spirit, and then we'll build it after,
Okay.
right? So we're not necessarily distilling the product, but we get neutral grain spirit and then blend with flavoring and different things.
Because I remember you saying before, you like getting totes of stuff in for some of these things, which to me, I know I've said to you before, imagining a tote full of liquid is just scary as fuck to me. Like I don't understand how it works. Like my wife's business works with that too, with
Yeah.
the sanitizer that she makes, and I'm just like, I can't imagine a super sack that you would have grain, something equivalent of that being filled with liquid.
Yeah, well, I mean, these are generally like IBC totes. I think Maddie Smooth posted on Instagram today, New Belgium doing or whatever, doing IBC totes of product, and so it's IBC totes usually. There are some that are like a super sack and a Gaylord that are kind of annoying to work with. But like one co-packer we actually get in. a bourbon base, and then this is a flavored product, right? So the bourbon base is fine, whatever, but we don't have to make it. But then we will mix it and blend it and package it. But we have other co-packers where we are actually brewing and distilling their product. So it kind of depends on what the project calls for, and we have the flexibility to do both.
I just saw what you meant. They got their Transatlantic Creek
Yeah.
today. But so a lot of it really does sound somewhat similar to the brewing industry, like making wort, fermentation, packaging.
hmm
But then you have a lot of stuff that's a little similar to contract brewery with like all the different brands,
Yep.
all the different bottle types, I'm sure labels, and then dealing with distributors and pickups and all of that. Like, is your dock like insane with like pickups and deliveries and stuff like that?
I mean, it's kind of a mess. So like we had worked on a project earlier this year with Heaven's Door, Bob Dylan's whiskey, where that was simply a packaging thing. We weren't even producing anything, but it was co-packed in a holiday box with our bitters designed for an old fashioned with Bob Dylan's whiskey. And so we would get in literally pallets of cases of whiskey and then have to break them down and build these holiday boxes and then stock them back up. And that took up so much space and was a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, we have probably 100 different labels alone. I mean, our bitters typically come in 100 milliliter bottles, but we've done some as small as 50 milliliter bottles. Our cans come in 100 milliliter, 200 milliliter. We also do 750s of our RTDs of Dash Fire RTDs. We have got multiple different bottle types for all of the co-packers because everyone wants to do something a little bit different, or a different stopper, or a different topper, or a different whatever, or different shrink wrap, or any of those things. So it does become like contract brewing on steroids when it comes to like all of the differences, right? Because like if you contract brew, you're still going into the same kegs. You're probably going into a 12 or a 16-ounce can. You're not like going into like a glass harmonica. Like so yeah, so it really kind of depends on what's going on, because even like a very similar shaped bottle, if you can't convince your co-packer to go to the exact same bottle that you already have, that means an adjustment to your labeler. Or somebody wants this thing, but it's tapered, and so now that's an adjustment to your labeler, and so all of that just adds a lot of complexity.
I mean, I always thought about that with Kevin. You have the 12-ounce bottles, but you also have the 11 the
330s,
bottles that that
11
the
dudes.
triple goes into. That, I mean, that had to be these minor differences and calibrations for the bottler and the labeling and all of that.
Oh, it's a pain. I mean, it's a pain in the ass, and I have 3 different bottle sizes. I can't even imagine. I also want to say how thankful I am that my partner, Bill McPhee, does not listen to this podcast, because when he heard you mention bottling something in a glass harmonica, he would have gone, "That's a great idea. We should do that." I think that quads in general would be great inside glass harmonicas, and then my life would suck somehow more. So thank you, Bill, for not listening to this show.
And then good luck trying to restock that in your minibar.
I'm so Mike, I knew you would get that joke.
You're from the land of Hedberg.
I am, yeah. I was just talking about Mitch Hedberg today, and how I went to the Mitch Hedberg tribute show. So yeah,
I didn't get the joke, obviously. Sorry.
Because you're a terrible comedian fan.
I like Mitch Hedberg, but for whatever reason, I don't. That one I didn't remember.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you
no,
talk about well, actually, I was just going to use a word that you probably shouldn't use in polite society anymore. So I'm going to pass and move on and just say, no, I don't get Mitch Hedberg jokes. I did have a question. I did have a question. And this is for somebody, obviously, that's in the industry
yeah,
and, an industry that you are, in some ways relatively new to. You haven't been into it as long as I'm guessing you were in the brewing industry from the
yep,
beginning. But and also you're doing multiple sides of this and in making spirits and things of that nature. But the RTD section in general,
yeah,
going back 3 years on this show, we were talking about seltzers and we
yeah,
were having conversations and saying, everyone's getting into seltzers, but I never see a future where the cooler at the local grocery store is going to have as many different seltzer brands as it does beer brands.
sure,
I always thought it was going to be a niche. Now I knew it would get big and it's like an accordion. It gets bigger, it gets smaller, new brands come out. I look at RTDs in a similar way, but I know things are changing, people's habits are changing. From someone who's living this, do you see RTDs becoming like brands wise in a grocery store cooler as big as the craft section, or is it still going to stay as a smaller kind of thing?
It's interesting. I think we're not competing against beer like seltzer is in an RTD space. We're
Mhm.
more competing against other spirits, and I know maybe feels like a nuance without a point, but the reality is so like between us and co-packers, there's not it's not like the Jack Daniels RTD is that just the Jack and Coke, right? It's not just those obvious things. Um, we have like between us and co-packers, there's a grapefruit daiquiri, there's a pina colada, there's an Americano, which is not a drink that people are necessarily familiar with. A Martinez, which is not a drink people are necessarily familiar with. A Boulevardier, which is not things that people are necessarily super familiar with. We have like at Dash Fire alone, we have like 6 different kinds of old fashioned because we've got like a fig and cascara one. We've got these multiple Manhattans and old fashions. I think there's actually probably a little bit more place to play than seltzer, because seltzer is kind of you like seltzer now. Which kind of fruit do you want with it, right?
Yeah.
Just like,
Um,
okay, we did black cherry, we did this, we did this. Okay, get the
yeah,
fuck on.
exactly. Whereas RTDs, like maybe I don't like an old fashioned, but I really like a pina colada, right? There's
Mhm.
I think it appeals to an even broader cocktail audience than necessarily seltzers do. Seltzers are people who are already drinking Lacroix, or you know what I mean. Like it's not nearly as broad as, because I can make a cocktail for someone who really likes a rye cocktail, or I can make someone who really likes a rum cocktail, and those are 2 very different drinkers. I don't think seltzer drinkers are very different drinkers. I think they're already the same. So I think the box is a lot more limited with seltzer, whereas RTDs, I think the space is a lot larger, especially as people kind of figure out how to take all these cocktails. And mixology is still a thing. There's still new cocktail bars opening up all over the place with some guy in a smock and with a creme brulee torch and
And a
fruit
funny
I've never
hat.
even heard of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
And a
this is
handlebar mustache.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Yes. So I think there's still some of those things going on, and so I wouldn't say that RTDs are going to take over that space that beer is necessarily, but like as you've noticed, wine in a can become a bigger space, or some of those other things. I think that's where that really plays, and so it's kind of hard to talk about what that space is. Um, I
You
mean,
know, you made a great point that I didn't really consider with RTDs, and part of it being that they might not be necessarily directly trying to compete with seltzer and beer, but the ones that are in cans just so happen to be competing against them slightly because they have to be refrigerated or because those ones are cans are always going to be next to the beers, at least in like grocery stores and refrigerated type of situations. Because there are bottled RTDs, like you said, they've been around for a while. Like I've had Slow and Low going back like feels like a decade. And I just got over the holiday break the On the Rocks old fashioned. They have the little bottles. They were BOGO at the little liquor store by my house.
Well,
So
and again, they don't have to be refrigerated. They're refrigerated because people are expecting them to be refrigerated, but not because they have to be.
that's
Because
true.
they
Yeah.
want to grab
Right?
and go.
Yeah. People want to grab and go with that stuff, but they certainly don't have to. You could have an end cap at Total Wine that's nothing but RTDs.
Yes. Very, very true.
Yeah.
I think you've just made the argument that it is much more of a danger to the craft beer industry, because I think it's a perfect looking at this and saying, okay, you've got seltzer. What else do you do with it? I think I think Budweiser seltzer and Corona seltzer and the seltzer from the craft brewery down the street, how different are they really going to be? Where's
They
the
really are.
quality at? Where with cocktail, I mean, there's never been, as to my knowledge, a seltzer bar where you go in and someone mixes the perfect fruit concoction and puts it in seltzer, but everyone wants to go to a great cocktail bar.
Exactly.
And the variation is so great that I think with the changing palate and what people are looking for calorie counts and things of that nature, I think it could easily push out lots of craft beer and scratch that itch of, the whether or not it is true. And I don't know, you could talk a little bit about quality and the difference maybe between a cocktail you get at a bar versus a cocktail you get in a can. Maybe they're the same, maybe there's a difference, I don't know. But there's at least the illusion of craft and creativity and exploration that you certainly can get in the RTD space.
Yeah, I mean, I think no one is ordering an Americano at a bar, but if they get an Americano and an RTD at the liquor store, maybe they're going to order an Americano. Now, name the last time you ever heard anyone order an Americano.
Don't know
it
what that
doesn't
is.
happen.
I've only made it at home.
Yeah, but the reality is you have an opportunity to introduce people to new cocktails as well. I mean, I think the other challenge for beer is I'm not a hazy IPA hater, but that fad has not died down, and
But that means it's not a fad, though.
well, to a point, right? Like we said, seltzers are a fad, and they held on a lot longer, but then they've started to die again. Um, to to Kevin's point about the accordion effect with that. But what I would say is, they're all the same fucking thing. I don't know how many like I don't know how I can't tell the difference between every one of these Citro Mosaic hazy IPAs that everyone has. Everyone's making the same beer. That's my struggle right now, is that everyone is making the same beer.
And some of them very poorly.
Yeah, and I've been so grateful for the kind of the resurgence of lagers up here, but now everyone's making the same goddamn Czech pills, and I love Czech pills, but there seems to be so much trend chasing in beer because you don't want to be left behind that everyone is making the same thing. And in the RTD space, there's not trend chasing. I feel like there's a lot more innovation there because people are still, and maybe it's just because it's an immature market space, but everyone's still trying to differentiate themselves rather than do what everyone else is doing.
It's funny because I've always, always is not the right word, but as long as I've been into spirits, and that's been close to the amount of time that I've been in beer, like the things that are trendy, I feel like in cocktails is making a good classic. like the things that have been around for a long time, being able to make a good version of that. And then you have you fill out your menu with interesting stuff that the bartenders have created themselves, which does seem way more limitless than brewing does,
Well, yeah,
despite what some brewers might want to tell you.
yeah, no, I really do think there is just something like anecdotally, my sister thinks every beer tastes the same, right? And she has cocktails that she hates, and she has cocktails that she loves because spirits are just you have a wider range of ingredients, right? You can make it from agave, you can make it from potatoes, you can make it from rice, you can make it from barley, you can make it like there's just so much more there, and that's just the base spirit,
Yeah.
right? Now you're adding in that you're mixing spirits and you're mixing flavors and you're doing all these other things. Like if beer mixology could get a better leg, that would certainly help. Um, but I mean, margins are already thin. Trying to add in complexity to that uh, presents a big challenge for sure. Um, yeah,
Well, beer also has the challenge of there's a societal expectation brought on by whatever 100 years or so of light macro lagers
yeah,
that pigeonholed beer and what it's supposed to be. And I think last week on the show I talked about a guy who called in and left a message saying how expensive my beer was,
yeah,
having no idea how expensive it is to make or what my margins are. Whereas when you're playing in a new space, you do get a chance to set the market a little bit. And I think there's a little bit less expectation. I'm sure you still have to compete with the drinking habits of people that were before they were grabbing a seltzer or before they were grabbing a beer or before they were grabbing a bottle of Jack Daniels and getting their own Coke. But I think an emerging market like this, everything you're saying, the more and more I hear it, I'm hearing craft beer in the 80s. I'm
oh
hearing that
yeah,
emerging kind of playground where there was less saturation,
yep,
more room to develop your own thing, get good at something and experiment, and not have to worry that someone down the street was making a Pilsner and you didn't have one, so they were going to go to their tap room. And that's
yeah,
what everyone's suffering right now because that competition and that impetus to do that thing that you don't even want to do because you don't want to be left out in the cold. I mean, it keeps people up at night. And with all these breweries, you mentioned that breweries closing your neck of the woods. I think in the last month, I've seen 4 closing notices of breweries in Florida. And people are like, wow, this is really bad. I'm like, you ain't seen nothing yet, baby.
yeah. No, no, absolutely. And to like to Mike's point about the classics too. Like I judge it like when I go to a brewery, I'm gonna order their lager or their pilsner, right? Because that's gonna tell me probably more than anything about what I need to know about that brewery. And when I go to a cocktail bar, I'm gonna order their old fashioned or their Manhattan because that's gonna tell me more than anything what I need to know about that place. Um, but again, uh, even with the distillery, your base spirit might be one thing, but you have a billion other things to work with, right? Like it's almost like adjunct beers in reverse, right? Like like we literally
You said about your old fashions that you have like multiple variations
yeah
of your
yeah
old
yeah
fashioned.
yeah
And
we've got
it's
like a
funny that in cocktails, creating a rendition of a classic, at least from what I see, doesn't get looked at as a bastardization like in beer. That if you were to take like an ESB and put fucking pineapple in it, that's a terrible example. But like you do something like that, and people are going to call you out for like bastardizing a classic. But for a classic cocktail, it's innovative and it's something new
Yeah.
just by changing up like the sugar that you put into an old fashioned.
Yeah. If you use Demerara syrup rather than your classic sugar cube white cane sugar, that's already elevating it to a different level. If you're mixing like an aromatic and an orange bitters in there, that's already changing it up a little bit. If you're changing your cherries to be a little bit different, yeah, no, absolutely. I think because like most places up here still will do like your classic old fashioned, but then they'll have like
Yeah.
2 or 3 other takes on an old fashioned, right?
Yeah, even if the menu has like a different version on it, you can just be like, "Can I have a regular old fashioned?" And yeah, they're gonna make it for you.
People still just want a cheeseburger, man.
Yeah.
Right? Like at some point, like it doesn't matter how much peanut butter and guacamole and jicama that you put on a burger. Some people just want a fucking classic American cheese, government cheese slapped on a quarter-pound patty on a bun. You know what I mean? But I think we have more freedom to play to both audiences because for us, in the tasting room, again, that's just all these additives, frankly, and we can make that. We can make those additives in real time. But then also, even for our RTDs, right? We take a base spirit and then we add uh different elements. I mean, so like, and that's not to say that we're not handcrafting this stuff. Do you know how much time I've spent peeling oranges at this place? It's fucking insane. We peel pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of actual real fresh orange peel. We're not just grabbing, the dried orange peel from BSG. We're actually peeling these real oranges and we're throwing them into a blue barrel of neutral grain spirit to sit for a while. Um there was one day where Dietrich and I were literally chopping up and then with a food processor processing lemongrass. And I don't know if you've ever worked with like real lemongrass, but it's like a fucking stalk. Like it's a like it
Yeah, it's like bamboo.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a nightmare,
It's
and it
tough.
totally
Yeah.
it totally beat up our food processor. But like literally, yeah, we were literally processing this stuff. This is still handcrafted stuff. So even if we're taking a base spirit, we're still adding all these other things. Um, which also gets to be another nightmare for another conversation. But yeah, it does. I think there's just a lot more freedom than craft beer has, and again, I think craft beer has only itself to blame for how much it's pigeonholed itself.
Shots fired.
I did kind of insinuated this question, and I just want to see if there is anything to this. You're talking about using these real ingredients, and
Yeah.
point well taken. I mean that this is what we talk about when we talk about craft beer and like using real cherry. I mean, look at Odd Breed. Wild Ale is one of the sister breweries to Barrel of Monks. I mean, Matt processes every fruit by hand, and
Yeah.
you can taste it in the product.
Yeah.
By the nature of canning a cocktail, is
Mhm.
there any difference if I'm going to make the best RTD I can, put it in a can and put it on a store shelf, in the freshness or the quality? Is there anything that's lost in translation that's going to make that not as good as it being poured in a bar and mixed by a mixologist with a funny mustache?
Um, that's a really good question. I would say one thing that we don't have in this industry because there is not the maturity in this industry is real testing about oxidation rates. I've taken some of our product that I've taken over to friends with a can or a bottle piercer, and I've done O2 testing and CO2 testing and things like that, and there's some pretty wild variability. Um, I I certainly think that there is a difference between uh our canned Manhattan, and the Manhattan made in our cocktail room. I'm not gonna like we don't just open up a can of our Manhattan in the cocktail room and pour it into a glass and send it to someone. That there's definitely something to that. I don't know that anyone really has some good. I'm sure someone out there has some good uh, quantifiable data to that. Um,
I mean,
but
it's really it's the time and place thing. Like some people want to go out and have a cocktail at have the best cocktail that they could have at a bar. Some people like making those at home, and some people just want to be able to just like they have busy lives. They have maybe they have multiple children, jobs, trying to make dinner, and you know what? I can pop open this little can, pour it into a glass, and I have a cocktail, and you know what? It's good enough for me.
yeah, yeah.
There's a place for that.
Well,
And
I also don't. I also don't think. I mean, as much as I always make fun of the average beer consumer, I think the average cocktail consumer is even more ignorant, frankly.
that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And because I think beer, at least people started to get educated on what like oxidate. Because I remember that people would rave about all the time, or when I would always be like, "That's an oxidized piece of mess. Like that's trans 2-nonenal. Like you might as well be licking a cardboard box. Like I don't get why you're raving over this shit." Um,
The one
I
from Indiana,
I'm
the
not
Imperial
answering.
Stout from Indiana that everyone loves.
I'm not answering. I don't know what in this voice house you're talking about. But I do think I think there are plenty of beers that oh god, especially barrel aged beers. Good lord, so many barrel aged beers fucking suck. But people read barrel aged and they just get all like a super big boner about it, and I do not get it. Um, but like with I mean uh, people aren't keeping their spirits at home in an oxygen free environment, right? That spirit is still changing just like a beer is changing over time.
Mhm.
But that bottle that they have a cap on or whatever is exposed to oxygen, so it's changing over time. So I think people are already used to like bottles evolving and changing and all that stuff. Whereas like people have learned, no, keep your beer cold so it doesn't age, drink your beer fresh so it doesn't age. But some people will drink out of the same bottle of gin for 3 years, right?
I
And that's very clearly changed.
I just finished off a bottle of Lagavulin that I had for probably about 4 years.
Yeah,
And I'm like, yep, that's much, much different than what
yeah.
I remember it being.
I mean, you can't chase time, and
You can
oxy.
try.
Yeah, I don't. Dude, I'm in my mid 40s. I've been trying to do that for a while. It does not work. Um, I but also oxygen is gonna change everything. Like literally, change doesn't happen without oxygen, right? Like everything. That's why I've always laughed about like waxed bottles. I'm like, you're gonna age something where you're trying to keep out oxygen when oxygen is literally what helps age something. It just feels antithetical to the whole point. But it's more just about, again, as I said at the top of the podcast, beer is all marketing.
And I mean, cocktails are a lot of marketing too. I mean,
Oh yeah, for
every
sure.
the world is marketing.
I no, I mean, yeah. To your point, man. Like people that do a call on a mixed drink, uh, make me laugh so much. I'm like, if you're gonna put Coke on a bourbon, you're covering up any superior qualities of that bourbon. So why the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you just doing the well drink? Why are you paying $20 more sometimes for something that's getting covered up by all the other mixers? Like that's what confuses me on that. But studies have shown that that you can show Grey Goose drinkers in a blind test that they don't like Grey Goose, and then you ask them what their next drink order is going to be, and it's still going to be a Grey Goose because you know, uh, as much as I make fun of beer, spirits are definitely an identity drink. They're definitely an identity drink.
I can see that. Yeah, especially with some of those. I hate to say legacy brands, but the brands that have been around for quite a long time, like Jack drinkers are Jack drinkers, and they like to say that they're Jack drinkers.
Yeah, I guarantee you that your average captain drinker could get Admiral Nelson's and would have no idea.
Well, just because people love those things, like you said, that doesn't mean they're educated. And, people are going to have their preferences for these different kinds of spirits and they have no idea what the hell they're drinking. But the fact that people are willing to spend so much more on wine and spirits than they are on beer changes the equation in a big way and
Oh,
really
absolutely.
gives a leg up to someone working in that space, because whether or not the bottle of whiskey that's $50 is twice as good as a bottle that's 25, that's up for debate. Everyone can have that conversation, but we don't have that luxury in the beer space, because
No.
what's the most expensive bottle of beer going to get? 20, 25 bucks, and you're going to sell it for, you're going to sell for 50? No, that's just not going to happen. So you have that extra wiggle room, you have that place to make extra margin and actually be profitable. I always say that I'm pretty sure 95% of the breweries in existence had no plans ever to actually make money. They just thought how cool it would be to open a brewery.
Yeah. No. I think that's a great point. And like I always talked about this. So like I remember one year, Westy 12 was available in the States, and I bought some, and I overpaid for it. And I admit that I overpaid for it, but like when I was going to buy Westy and I was going to do it, and my father-in-law at the time made fun of me for how much I spent on Westy, and I was like, hold on, man, you just paid $200 for a bottle of wine last night at dinner. That I guarantee you couldn't pick out of a lineup between that and $2 Chuck. Like, there are two studies that I always reference, and I don't have like the actual the sources for me. One was at
That's perfect for this show.
Yeah, no. One was at the University of Bordeaux. They took all the enology students, and they gave them a white wine, and they had them describe it. Then they gave them a white wine that they dyed red and had them describe it. And to a student, they described it as vastly different things, even though the only thing that changed was the color. Right? Like the white wine was all like pear and vanilla and butter, and then
Stone fruits.
and the reds were all like tobacco and cherry and all of that, but it was literally the exact same wine. So that was and again, enology students at the University of Bordeaux. The other one that came up was at one of the big California wine competitions. Um, they accidentally awarded the wrong thing, and they realized that people couldn't tell the difference between a $200 bottle of wine and a $5 bottle of wine. And these were judged by literally expert, sommeliers in California, in Napa Valley, like people who should know all of this stuff could not tell the difference between a $100 bottle of wine and a $5 bottle of wine. But you can get away with doing that in wine, that you can charge silly prices, right? And then the other thing in like with wine, it's grape must. That's it. And people get mad if this year tastes the same as last year. Whereas in beer, you have all of these different ingredients, and people get mad if they don't taste the same. Like beer is definitely getting the short end of the stick on so many of those things. Like brewers have to be consistent with, different growing regions and different climate conditions on hops and on on malt and different types of yeast, and whereas a winery probably only uses one type of yeast that they're probably cropping themselves, and uh, grapes from the exact same valley, and people still want it to taste different because they want to be able to taste the terroir. But no one talks about terroir with beer. And so it elevates the experience. And like you said earlier, Kevin, like 200 years of beer made it like a blue collar drink, so you can't charge too much. Whereas
Yeah,
wine was this elevated thing, and so spirits are the same way.
and even with beer, the craft, we labeled it as an affordable luxury.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember Sam Calgione calling it that, and at the time thinking like, yes, that's brilliant. But now I'm thinking like, was that dumb?
I think it's
That
fucking
we
dumb. I think it's
like
fucking dumb.
that we sold ourselves short
right?
on that.
Right?
Well,
like
but
like the margins are so freaking tight on beer, especially right now. It's so susceptible to the climate, and not to say that like wine isn't susceptible to the climate, but the yield on barley gets substantially different compared to the yield on grapes in a hot or a cold or a dry or a wet season. Beer is behind the eight ball from the jump, and so to make it an affordable luxury rather than a premium product is already a problem with it. Yeah, no, I
but
agree.
but in some ways, you're just working with whatever you have because, like we mentioned earlier, imagine a craft brewery comes out tomorrow and says, "Okay, my 6 packs are $25 of my, of the best IP you ever had in your life." And we all know part of what is happening with the wine, and by the way, I love that you mentioned those two studies and those situations. I worked in the wine as a wine steward for years. I've used those examples myself many times. So thank you, because those are so apt and they're
Yeah.
so translatable to everything in this like beverage industry. But the thing they had on beer, especially in this country, is they had a giant jump. They're out in front, and people already expected to spend money on them. So they didn't have to come out and change the game. Whereas now someone comes out and says, "Hey, listen, I'm going to make the best IPA in the history of mankind. It's going to cost $25 a 6 pack." People are going to tell them to go fuck themselves. Even if it is the best IPA on the planet, even if it is, heads and tails above anything else that's being made. And a lot of the reason was because if you didn't, if the roles were switched, wine couldn't do it either because of the reason you mentioned, because people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. When I was a wine steward, I used to open corked bottles, PCA, undrinkable bottles of wine that were hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And I remember one time I opened up a bottle that was $350 at the table. I opened the bottle. It was so corked that I smelt it as the cork was coming out.
Yeah.
I went to take the bottle away and say, "I'm sorry, sir. Just so you know, this is corked. I'm going to get you another bottle." He goes, No. Let me try it. I know my wine." I'm like, "Well, I'm the wine steward here, and I'm telling you I'm going to switch this bottle out for you. I promise you I've got you on this." No. Try it. He's like, "This is fine. I'll drink it." I'm like, this is disgusting, and you're drinking wet cardboard.
You're paying $300 to drink this shit. Yeah. No.
But he had no idea. And that was just what he did. And if we ever got beer to that situation where I could make completely shit beers and charge $350 about them, man, I wouldn't even be doing this podcast. I would just be, rolling around in a pile of money.
You'd be working at 450 North. No,
You'd be Scrooge McDuck.
I think that's one thing that's great about the RTD space again is because you don't have to have a premium spirit base because you're already kind of making that cocktail, right? Again, to my point of people who think they can tell the difference between their spirit bases and a cocktail, like like in certain things, right? Like in a martini, I can tell the difference between like Hawkeye vodka and Stoli, but
you shouldn't have vodka in a martini because it's a gin drink.
I know. Well, I know.
Leave it to Mike to get, in the weeds on the most pedantic thing you can think of.
I was gonna say, actually, it's pronounced pedant. No, but uh okay, fine. Beefeater versus Hendrix, you motherfucker.
Thank
But
you.
but it, most people can't tell that. So, like, for us, yeah, we do spirits, but we largely specialize again in like RTDs and things like that. We're not necessarily bragging that we make. Well, and by the way, man, I have been to so many distilleries. There's a certain uh distillery I won't name in another state that's south of us that uh, uh
There's a lot south of you, so you're
yeah,
pretty good.
but man, uh it's just it's not good, right? So Kevin, to your point about it being like the 80s in beer, yeah, we're naive enough, but there's also a lot of just absolute horseshit spirits out there right now in the craft spirit thing. But then also, you know, there's a lot more legacy brands with a lot more diversity in spirits than there is in beer. So that's a whole other thing too, right? We haven't even gotten into that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot more legacy spirits that set a different standard. So yeah, man, I feel like we. Uh, I I know we're probably wrapping up here. We still have like 7 different things to cover.
We have to do a part 2. How about that?
Yeah, I know. I would be down to do that. I think this is a good conversation. It's really interesting to me. As I've moved from beer into spirits. I you know the how much is the same and how much I can use my expertise, but how many things I'm still learning at the exact same time.
Oh yeah, it's so funny. Funny is not the right word. It's just, figure of speech. To just see you from day to day be like, what the fuck is going on here? To being like, holy shit, like learning this, learning that. Like it's kind of fun to be living vicariously, I guess you could say, through you in this new experience and new kind of industry.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that because spirits are less mature, and also because they seem to care less about certain quality standards that I've been able to bring. And it's also highlighted for me how much beer taught me. I think maybe I didn't realize how many skills I acquired in beer that I've been able to bring over to spirits. And that's probably been the most rewarding for me, is to realize that, holy shit, no, I didn't just waste my time for the last decade plus on beer. Like I did learn a bunch of things that are not only translatable but also translatable to other industries.
Absolutely. So I think that sounds like a good point to kind of uh, hit pause. We'll say that we'll hit pause. Um, but okay, Tim, you're a listener to the show, so I think you know what comes next. Even though I didn't actually prepare you and tell you, like, hey, last calls. That's a thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if you had anything prepared, but I'll go ahead and run through it, and I'll go first. So if you didn't, you have an opportunity to rack your brain over it. Um, the point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beverage related, not beverage related. The only rules to the last calls is it's uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. I'll start things off. The day that this episode comes out, we are 7 days away from pitchers and catchers starting to report for spring training. And I am looking forward to baseball coming back into our lives. Um, Regular listeners to the show know that Kevin and I are both big baseball fans. So looking forward to a new Phillies season here. Also, while that's all going on, I'm excited for a Philly season. I am bummed for people who are athletics fans because this is possibly the last season that the A's exist in Oakland. Their lease is up in the Coliseum at the end of this season, and we don't know what they're going to do in the, I think, 3 years in between that and when their Las Vegas stadium is supposed to be completed. I know A's fans, and they are super bummed about this whole situation going down, and I feel bad for those folks. I'm looking forward to there being a Phillies A's series in Philadelphia this year, which rumors are stating that they are both going to wear throwback unis for, which would be really cool because they did exist in Philadelphia at the same time for a few years. And I think that that would be an awesome way to kind of send off some of the A's vibes and mesh that in with my own team's vibes. Um, I really feel for you, A's fans. It's a shitty situation to be put through, and I hope nothing but the best for the team. But yeah, looking forward to some baseball.
Is Carney Lansford going to make an appearance in an A's game? That's really what I'm looking for. I actually really loved Carney Lansford as a player back in the day. So yeah.
Tim, do
Big
you
Carney
want to?
Lansford, Lansford reference.
No, I was actually thinking about this earlier today because I am very familiar with the last call. I So there's been what I think is a very healthy push in recent years to destigmatize mental health and finding help. But it's something that's been very near and dear to me, both for friends of all of ours and for myself recently as I've gone through things. Um, uh, uh, do a self check. Um, th- one of the biggest things I realized recently when I was talking to my daughter, because I've been going through some shit, is uh, you know, um, the heart is an organ, lungs are an organ, and sometimes you can have a defect in your heart, right? Or sometimes you can make bad life choices like smoking or getting out of shape that are also hurting your heart. The brain is also an organ, right? So you might have chemical imbalances naturally, or you might have made choices that have also hurt your brain's ability to function. Uh, so if you think about mental health as just health, just think about this is one more organ that you need to exercise and feed right and uh, uh, follow best practices. And then sometimes you need to talk to a doctor and figure out what's going on, right? I can exercise perfectly. I can eat right, and there's still going to be problems where my doctor is going to have to help me with my lungs or my heart or my kidneys or whatever. Your brain is no different. So I really, I, I, I want to just continue to encourage people to take care of themselves mentally. It's not selfish to do that. I think probably, certainly my parents' generation probably made it feel like it was a problem to do that. But and then remember that everyone else is going through some things. So uh, it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to make a village happen. So, just take care of yourselves.
Here, here. Kevin?
Always in a position to follow something incredibly profound and extremely important with something just ridiculously stupid. I, my family and I, by the time this is being heard, will have been to Legoland for my son's 6th birthday. and I am just so thrilled to do this. He loves theme parks. I live for theme parks. I would prefer to do nothing but go to theme parks for the rest of my life. I have no interest in other humans. I have no interest in anything else. I just want to ride roller coasters and have fun. So we are going there for the first time. I'm really looking forward to it because even though these are not the big rides that I'm used to at like Cedar Point or Universal or what have you, they seem like there's a lot of fun stuff going on there. And I've come to just adore Legos. I could not have given a flying fuck about Legos when I was growing up. Did not care. But building Lego sets of Star Wars and Jurassic Park and Mario with my son has just been a joy, and I love it. I love to see his little brain putting together and going through the manual and building something perfectly. And it says so, like 8 and up, and he's like, "Daddy, it's 8 and up, but I did it. I did it," because he's 5 years old, and it's so he's so proud of himself, and it's so cool. And some of the times I want to like get a Lego set and like not tell him about it because I just want to do it myself because it's so satisfying to put the little things together. But I'm not a monster, so I haven't done that. But the fact that we're going to get to go and this Lego theme stuff and pick up some new Lego sets and stay in this in rooms and they have Legos there to play with, I just cannot wait because this trip's all about him and him enjoying this and me getting to enjoy him enjoying this. So I'm just really looking forward to that.
Where is Legoland?
It's near. I think is it Winter Park. It's near Lakeland, Florida.
I thought it was a little bit south of Orlando. It's somewhat close to Orlando.
Well, but I just know it's Lakeland's the biggest city that I know that it's close to, and I just know that because the Tigers have spring training there. So that's why I know Lakeland, and that's my little point of reference. But it's a little bit southwest of Orlando.
Nice. No, I'll have to. My daughter is very much into Legos, and she has a lot of Legos from me as a kid because I had a giant Rubbermaid tote of Legos that she got, and we keep on adding to it. She would very much enjoy that. I'll have to maybe plan a trip down.
It's supposed to be like not as busy as Orlando, or like Disneyland or Universal. Winter Haven, not Winter Park. Yeah, Winter Haven. It's supposed to be just so family oriented and friendly. The lines aren't as long. It's more doable in one day. Every family that we've talked to have been like, "You gotta go," because it's such a great vibe for the kids. So yeah, so we're doing that. We asked him. We said, "Do you want to have a party with all your friends, or do you want to go to Legoland?" And he didn't even bat an eyelash. He said, "My friends can go screw themselves." He didn't say that, but he insinuated it.
His eyes said that.
Yeah,
it's not nearly as good as Duploville in Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Have you been to that one, Kevin?
No, not familiar.
Tim, do you want to plug anything?
Probably not. I would just say that if you guys can find Dashfire spirits and bitters around at your local liquor stores, I would like to be able to make more money. The one thing we didn't get into is that the spirits industry doesn't pay any better than the beer industry. So please go ahead and support those. Otherwise, I'd also like to plug this plucky upstart podcast called United We Drink. If you guys could go ahead and check them out on Spotify, Stitcher, which isn't even a thing anymore, YouTube, MySpace, and everywhere else that fine podcasts are found. Friendster, yeah, please go ahead and check those guys out. I think they got a thing going. So go ahead and check them out.
If you're listening to this, you might like it.
Listeners of United We Drink also liked United We Drink.
Who'd have thunk? Kevin, you want to plug anything?
We will have a couple beers coming out here soon. One of them is called Verdant Embrace. It's a beer that Ralph put together. It's a New Zealand style IPA that is just really, really good and just really, really well made. It's got bitterness to it. It's not just a flabby one-dimensional IPA. Ralph puts so much thought into these things, and doesn't taste like every other IPA we make, right? It does. It's not just it's not just another label of the same exact beer. And it's like, look, we did something new. It's actually a well-crafted beer. And I taste it out of the tank. I haven't had it carbonated yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. So if you are around, actually, the beer will be available at our tap room, and maybe a couple bars around there. And we're sending 20 cases to New Jersey. So those, if you're near Boca Raton, Florida, or New Jersey in general, be on the lookout for Verdant Embrace.
Zach Braff and what's the
Donald
Peter
Faison?
Skarsgård?
Peter Skarsgård,
He's in
yeah.
that movie too, right?
Yeah.
They'll be able to have it, right?
So that's who we sent it to.
Yeah. I don't really have much. Mike loves beer on the things. Just not Twitter. Not doing that right now. I don't give a fuck what the fuck it's called, if it's X or Twitter. Not doing it. So find me on the other places. Tim, thank you so much for being here. I know that you had a hell of a day from texting you earlier, and to be able to power through all of that and be like, you know what, I'm still gonna get on a podcast and talk about it all. So I really appreciate it.
I really enjoy talking to you both, very sincerely. It's always a good time. You guys are very easy to talk to, and you also let me talk like I know what the fuck I'm talking about, so it's good.
It's easy when you do know what you're talking about.
And out of the three of us, somebody has to know. So we've nominated you.
Congratulations, Tim.
Yeah, well,
you are now you're our fact checker for you've been our fact checker for a little.
I was gonna say, don't pretend like I have not already fact checked some of your podcasts.
Getting text messages from you at like 8:30 in the morning on something that we said on the podcast the day that it released. I'm like, all right, I don't know whether to be happy or sad that Tim is listening to us already in his day.
I noticed we've never like printed a retraction, so I'm not sure what he's fact checked, but maybe we have to have a separate like Tim's Corner where he just leaves a voicemail mess. This is great. Tim leaves a voicemail message of the things that and then we just like splice it into the show.
Oh God, I love that idea. Well, actually, guys, you mentioned
it's like the guy at the end of Pardon the Interruption who always fact checks everything at the end of that.
There you go.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, by the way,
Wait,
Kevin, before we do, any update to the guy who sent the voicemail?
No, I left a voicemail message. I never thought he was really going to get back to me, but no, that trail has gone cold. We'll probably never hear of it again. But the next time I get
cold cases,
yeah, next time I get some crazy lunatic yelling at me because my beer is too expensive, you all will be the first to know.
Good. I cannot wait to hear.
One more time, a big thanks to Tim for coming on the show and talking with us. Yeah, we could really talk for a lot longer than that, and we probably let that go a tad longer than we normally would for an interview, but you get lost in it sometimes. Thank you to all of you for coming in and joining us. Got to get the housework out of the way here. Make sure that you check out our website, UnitedWeDrink.com, as well as our social media where you can follow us. We are at United We Drink on Twitter. We're at United We Drink on Blue Sky as well. We are at United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads. And you can follow the show, subscribe to it on any of the podcast services. If you are listening to us for the first time on a podcast service and you like what you hear, go and subscribe to the show. That way you get it to your podcast app of choice every 2 weeks with brand new episodes. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and drop us a a review and a rating. It takes like a minute and really helps out the algorithm on things there. If you would like to support the show financially, you can go to our website, unitedwedrink.com, and go to the Brands We Love page. We have a bunch of different stuff on there. If you click on those links and go and make a purchase through them, we get a little kickback for that, and it goes helping towards our hosting fees here. We have great stuff like Made in Cookware, Trade Coffee, Liquid Death Water, and teas. They have iced teas. And lots of other awesome stuff over there. We also have our store, unitedwedrink.com/store, with shirts, buttons, stickers, totes, and a lot of other fun things over there. Other than that, we'll be back in a couple weeks with a brand new episode. Thank you, everyone, once again, and cheers.
No, try again. No, try again. No, try again. No, 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 no.